All right, we're going to get started. Welcome everybody to Growth Without Guesswork, the Power of Precision. My name is Matt Reed, Chief Revenue Officer at Powerlytics. I've been in the wealth tech industry for 20 years, and I'm sure a large majority of you on this phone I've been in probably a sales call or two with in the past. Excited to have you with us today. Equally excited is to have Lisa Graham with us today. Lisa Graham is a co-founder of Graham Media Partners. And with that, I'll let Lisa do a quick little intro and we'll get started.
Sure. Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
Thanks for having me today. My husband, Steve, and I, we founded Graham Media Partners about 11 years ago. And over that time, we've worked with over 150 advisor groups. We've worked with fintech companies, broker-dealers, custodians. Everyone that we work with is within the financial services ecosystem. And we operate as a full service marketing team. All of our advisors outsource marketing to us. And whether they're big, small, regardless of the type of client, our main objective is to help them grow, grow their brand awareness, grow their business. And so this fits right in with the topic that we're going over today.
Perfect. Yeah, and even more so fitting for this topic is precision. And the lack of precision that I had over the weekend when I hit myself in the head while putting something together. So I had to get a couple stitches over the weekend to stitch me up a little bit. So important to have the right information is a key theme to this. Also, reading directions is a good key theme as part of that. So with that, we'll jump right into the slides. So like Lisa said, right, there's a lot of headwinds facing wealth today, right? Around some of the need for better growth and better information around that. There's a lot of studies there's a ton of different studies out there around the need for better data, for better targeting. One of the studies that McKinsey came out with late last year was the need for more advisors, right? There's going to be a huge gap of advisors in the space, and that kind of speaks to a lot of the graying of America, but also the need for further scaling advisors practice, right? So I think the two key points of that study were the fact that that 100,000 advisor shortage is going to be needing to be filled by folks that are newer to the space, which then requires them to be more efficient and more effective. And I think everyone knows that the success rate of advisors, new advisors, is pretty low. In fact, the failure rate is about 70%, right? And so, being more effective in having these advisors be more successful and staying in business, right? I'm a failed advisor, myself, right? I was advisor out of school and moved to a different industry just for the fact that it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, and so. I think the studies around McKinsey just came out, and then also some studies around that Cerulli had done around the fact that about 40% of the assets are going to be retiring in terms of assets under management. And that speaks largely to advisors in the graying of America, and the need to backfill that with younger, newer advisors who are going to be taking over that. And so I think all of these metrics, whether it be the one on your screen or the ones I just mentioned, really speak to the fact that we need to make it easier and more scalable for advisors to do their business, right? We need to help them, scale their business earlier on in their growth phase, and then continue to grow organically and help them scale better. So I think we're going to cover a lot of that today of how Graham Media and how Powerlytics can play a part of that recipe and being able to be more effective and more efficient in their marketing and growth strategy. So there's a ton of different data metrics out there. Here's one on the screen, which is, obviously organic growth's a big topic of conversation. There's a ton of incoming investment on the PE side. I think there's a large realization that, wealth is a big, an opportunistic industry for that, for the PE investment. And they're looking for those firms and the scalable organic growth as part of that to help them drive some of the ROI and the 10Xs or whatever they're going to get on their revenue. So again, just these slides just kind of frame up the conversation around the fact that the need for more efficient access to data to help advisors and wealth management firms be more effective, because we're going to need it, right? The great wealth transfer is happening, right? And so to be in front of that, to understand your ideal client profile, to go out and ensure you have the right information to then go and target the second generation or the next generation of your clients is going to be largely important. And so, firms like Graham and Powerlytics think we have a really, helpful solution in able to drive a lot of those, strategies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa real quick. Just some of your comments, what you've seen. Obviously, you work with hundreds of wealth management firms. So you've been through it. You've taken firms from pre-growth stage to post-growth stage and everything in between that. So give us a little bit of kind of some things you're seeing, and then we can jump into some real life examples. That'd be great.
Yeah, a lot of this echoes what you had just said, Matt. These trends up on this slide are not a surprise to anyone, but there's a lot of competition, both in a lot of different models available today. Everyone's being asked to do more for more clients, without increasing fees often. You alluded to the M&A activity that's happening right now, shifting demographics. You mentioned the great wealth transfer, or whether it's going to heirs or whether it's going to a spouse, but money's moving somewhere. And we've seen with all of our advisor clients that organic growth is the most sustainable driver of both firm valuation and then also longevity, which I think Cerulli and a couple of the other stats you just mentioned hit on that. And Investnet did a study recently that organic growth, one of the main reasons why it is so difficult is because of prospecting. This was the number 2 reason that organic growth was hard, was that firms do not have access to the right data, and then they don't have the right data, so they're spending way too much time trying to cull through it and not getting the results that they need. So I think up next, there's a couple case studies that we can run through.
Well, you make a good point. I think, one of the things I've seen, one of the law, you probably live this every day within the firm is, marketing without precision wastes money, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Waste money, waste effort. You're kind of just like throwing a bunch of stuff out there and trying to see what sticks. Unfortunately, a lot of firms that don't start in with a really good strategy, they also don't do a great job of measuring stuff on the back end either. So it just kind of all ends up being a waste of time and money. But here are 4 examples of firms that they're doing a good job of this. They're going into their marketing with good data. They're identifying who they want to target. They're getting the right lists, and they're using that information the right way. So Navitor Wealth, this is an RIA out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Bentley Blackman is the founder of this firm, and they've been around 5 years, and they've grown exponentially within those 5 years. They target ultra high net worth individuals that went through a liquidity event, most often the sale of a business. And Bentley's also targeting people in Arkansas and then just the surrounding states, primarily. And he wants to have FaceTime with his clients. He has set up his team to staff this type of client, his whole referral network to staff this type of client. And he's had a lot of success once we've really got good data in, especially for our marketing campaigns. And some ways that Bentley is using this data is one-on-one outreach. And so especially going after that ultra high net worth former business owner clientele, a one-on-one personal email, personal phone call, that has worked well. And then we also use it for digital marketing campaigns. And so rather than setting up Google ads and just kind of filtering in a bunch of, random criteria, we're able to actually use precise lead lists. And that way we can retarget people and not waste money on the wrong people. Peak Financial, they're out of Newport Beach, California. They target high profile company executives, and they also target tech startup founders in Silicon Valley. And they got really precise with that targeting, especially within the high profile company executives, exactly which industry, exact demographics, investable asset levels, geographies. And once they had success there, they now have been able to go to those company executives and get introductions and leverage to really oversee the company retirement plans too. And so it's allowed them to expand their business in a whole new way. And ways that they will use lead lists would be, they do a lot of events, and so they will invite these specific people to events in their area. They focus the events on a lot of networking and also education. They don't want it to seem, salesy, especially people with very limited time. And so they'll make sure that they also get a panel. So then that way there might not be, that one advisor that someone doesn't know yet, but there might be someone else on the panel that's a good draw for them. And then Endeavor, this is a brand new breakaway RIA the past year or so. So they were really, starting from scratch. And so for them, being able to get lead lists was really important, to go after people and get some clients and get assets. And one of the first things that we did with them was really define who they're targeting. That way, as we got the lists in, they're a breakaway, they have limited time, they're all of a sudden trying to run a business at the same time, but they could, be a lot more efficient in their efforts. It's also helped firms, like all the ones on the screen here. I know Matt had mentioned before, especially junior members that are not coming from a huge network. Junior advisors could be given a list, that's highly qualified, within the right parameters, and they'll have a lot more success, at least knowing who they're talking to going into it.
Yeah, that's great.
And then the last example here, so Savant Wealth Management. This one is about Michelle Smith. She founded Source Financial. She recently went to Savant, but you may know her, from Source. She targets high net worth divorced women. So women who are either going through a divorce or are divorced. And she usually leverages lead lists for digital marketing. She will put up ads with a lot of educational materials. These women are married to mostly New York City area, so like pretty ultra high net worth men, where many of them have not worked in the past. And so they need a lot of financial education in general. And so she'll promote a lot of that financial education materials using these lists to target the right people. And then once they start a conversation, oftentimes they move over to the wealth management side. And so those are 4 quick examples, 4 really different firms using, data in really different ways. But with all of them, we've seen the growth of their business really take off once they had the right data to begin with.
That's great. Some key themes there, obviously, identifying a target audience of where you're going to focus, right? What's your ICP? And then from there, using data to help drive that strategy with, the help of your expertise in driving better outcomes, right? So there's thousands of data points out there that have proven that, a data-driven targeting improves conversion rates, right? And so, depending on your segment or your vertical, that could obviously vary. You could see upwards of 2x, 3x, 4x, depending on your industry, but it is proven, right? I look at my own business, you look at your own business, right? From an outbound targeting perspective, if you haven't defined your ICP and have data backing that to help drive your outbound, engagement strategy, you're going to be throwing money out the door, right?
Sure.
So that's great. And so it sounds like you were really helpful in developing kind of that, target audience, executing on that with a key set of data set, and then, actually executing on the campaign to drive, conversion and essentially drive the growth, which is awesome. That's great. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure.
So kind of taking that down the further step, right? I mean, you kind of covered a lot of this already, but again, it speaks to the fact that, marketing efforts without precision will provide you with lackluster results, right? And so I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that, but I think that really just speaks to many of the things that have been proven on the previous slide of with your clients that, with a strategy that was data driven, with a process and then run by professionals like Graham, there's a much better outcomes ahead.
Yeah, one other thing to call out, which, could be a topic for another webinar, but just one important piece to add on to that is, you identify the people that you want to target. you get the information of those exact people, you figure out how you're going to execute something. Make sure that you tailor the materials, like if you're targeting an audience and you're kind of blasting out some overview piece, it won't be as successful as if you make something custom, even if it's just kind of tweaking the language, updating the photo, or maybe, put out some client story. But if you really want to see a big increase, that's one step out there.
Yeah, obviously data is a part of the larger, Thanksgiving dinner, right? It's the side, but overall, it's going to be important that there's mindfulness, thoughtfulness, and then taking that information and making it more customized to your audience, right? Yeah, to your point, it needs to be a targeted list with a targeted message that speaks to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Let me just go to the next slide here. Yeah, I think this speaks to the same thing we just talked about. You want to talk about the products that are fit for your business, right? So targeting not only the folks that are ones that the lookalike models, right? Like folks that you've already worked with and why you've worked with them. Why are you successful? Is it women that are just recently divorced? Why are you what is your message to them and why you're kind of serving that audience and that just speaks to kind of finding the right folks for your practice. So yeah, we talk about precision, right? In growth. I mean, on Powerlytics side, right? Just to kind of dig into this a little bit. For those who don't know Powerlytics, we've been around for 10 plus years. Our core solution is providing firms and financial service firms a better data solution to help them drive more effective growth, right? And so the kind of 2 data points we built that are unique to our our company. We have a complete U.S. consumer data set that provides income and assets for every U.S. consumer. And we also have that on the business side, we have, for every for-profit business, we have their full financials, from a helpful for targeting and evaluation. So when you talk about data, obviously we believe in data as being a very key part to our growth strategy, right? And so when you think about some of the exercises you just talked about with the 4 firms we had up on the screen, we absolutely believe that having the right data set and the uniqueness of there's a lot of data out there. We believe in having high quality data driving high quality results. And so firms that like Powerlytics who have spent all their time figuring out how to deliver the highest quality data on a U.S. consumer, for example, by providing source of truth data from tax returns, we feel there's a very unique opportunity for us to work with Wealth in further continuing that growth strategy, playing a part in that recipe for the organic growth.
Yeah, no, that's a great point though, because there are different sources to get data, but if you're not getting source of truth accurate data, it's like a waste of time. You're going to get bounce backs, you're going to waste money, you're going to be targeting the wrong people. You're going to do a search and inaccurate results are going to come back, and it defeats the purpose of everything.
Yeah, and to us, we think that data is not we plays in every from customer life cycle from prior to customer person being a customer all the way to the end to the constant cycling of that servicing of that customer. And so when you look at kind of beginning to end in that whole entire client life cycle, we look at data being a key part to all of that, right? So when you look at maybe call it enterprise lead gen strategy, think of the opportunity around defining your ICP, but also then providing that a segmentation strategy for your existing customers, right? So not just coming in the door with a better prospect list that helps drive outbound and stuff like that, but also more so from a servicing, a wallet share optimization. There's firms who are out there who have stale data on a lot of their customers, right? And so with no friction or data aggregation as most folks have relied on, firms can use Powerlytics data to have a complete up-to-date view of their customers' financial profile, not just assets, but also income and other things. So we look at data as not just a input for the client acquisition process, but all throughout the client life cycle in helping you provide not only better service, but also other opportunities that may not be readily available to you as a advisor. You may not know they have a need for. So
yeah, that's a really great point. Like there's some, chatter about that right now, but I feel like a lot more of it is about next gen or just getting more clients in general. But you raised such a good point about not overlooking the clients you have today and what incremental gains can you make.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of like a segmentation strategy, if you have, stale CRM data, right? So, being able to do a fresh enrichment of every prospect in your CRM data, and no hands needed to be raised here, but you know your advisors and their stale CRMs and what's in there, right? So, having an up-to-date look of every one of your households in your CRM is a big value. Then obviously not to mention, adding on top of that, others that look similar to them as far as income and profile and consumer and wealth, to also then target them as a net new customer. So kind of going back, kind of wrapping up here as we're up on time. We wanted to kind of talk you through, and we did a lot of this during our time today, which is, Lisa, I'm a wealth manager. I'm a newer, advisor. How should I go about, my lead gen organic growth strategy? What does that look like? I mean, there's so many different data sets out there, or lead gen solutions, or marketing partners. How would you, direct, a newer wealth advisor? What do they need to do to kind of, break away from maybe someone who is, been out there for a while, or how do they differentiate themselves?
Sure. Yeah, I would say the number one thing is to think about who you're talking to. I think that's the first thing to start with. And it kind of goes with bullets 1 and 2 on this slide, but really understanding that person, updating your own messaging that it resonates, with that person. There was a slide a couple slides ago that, generic marketing that just is bland. It's just not going to attract anyone, and it, some advisors think they're kind of playing it safe with that by having this one size fits all, or we work with everyone kind of messaging, but it ends up just attracting kind of nobody, rather than really going after who you want to talk to. So define your niche, adjusting your messaging, and then, using right here the data to execute a plan, really be the next step.
Yeah, to your point, right? Like, listen, data is not there's no silver bullet to organic growth, right? There is a long, process that, a firm has to then institute into their, their day in, day out process, right? But I think, there's some key things here, at the top down, defining actually who is your niche is a great example. And then using data to help drive, your decision or outbound strategy, right? And so again, there's no silver bullet. Data is a part of the recipe here. And finding the right data partners is a key part to that, right? There's a lot out there that could drop, bad data in is bad outcome out, right? And so ensuring that you're working with the right partners, both from a data perspective and also, market perspective, will have a difference in your outcomes. And certainly, Powerlytics believes that, we have a very unique solution there from a data perspective. And kind of wrapping up here, we talked about a little bit on this segment, but it kind of just speaks to overall with that theme of knowing who you're trying to target, right? And then executing and not derailing that from your model, right? And being having some governance around how you go about your business, right? I mean, that goes for your business, my business. I mean, you have to stay focused on kind of what your core is, and certainly this all speaks to that, to that example. So a couple takeaways, right? I mean, for us here sitting in this room, hopefully it was helpful for those on the phone. Organic growth requires precision, right? And everyone's focused on organic growth in this industry right now. It is certainly a topic of conversation. And so, we believe with the power of Powerlytics data, providing kind of the where and the who, wrapping that around with the full service of Grand Media of actually delivering on that executed strategy, kind of can give you that repeatable process from an organic growth strategy. And so hopefully this was helpful. We were excited to have you folks today. If there's any questions, I know we gave us a few minutes left for Q&A, but if you have questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out, powerlytics.com. You can go there and hit us up on the sales channel, and you can ask any questions you have there. Same thing with Grand Media. If you go to grandmediapartners.com, you can email Lisa there, and we're happy to answer any questions for you guys. So I don't know if we have any questions. I'm just looking through the list here. I think we covered most of it. So yeah, I think we're good. So anyway, we really appreciate everyone's time today. Like I said, reach out to us on our respective websites, and we look forward to maybe doing another one of these again next year.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate it.